Formula One on 5 Live.
Hello and welcome to Bahrain and welcome to the Bahrain International Circuit, the setting for the first round of the 2024 Formula One season. The lights have come on around the circuit, the sun has set, and you might be able to hear from the noise around me, the grid is filling up. I'm Rosanna Tennant down on the starting grid and I'm watching on as Max Verstappen, his car in the Red Bull, is sitting on the top part of the grid, P1 alongside Charles Leclerc, and up in the commentary box, Harry Benjamin, our lead commentator this evening, is alongside racing driver Alice Powell. Harry Benjamin, a lot of excitement around this first round of the season. Are you feeling the butterflies, my friend?
I certainly am. I'm now stood on my feet overlooking the huge windows from our commentary position that sits just at the very top of the main grandstand, running parallel with the start-finish straight. All the teams still on the grid with their personnel not yet being asked to clear, but everyone just getting those last-minute preparations in as the floodlights that illuminate this Bahrain International Circuit, some 4,000 lights that light this place up over the 20 years it has been on the calendar, all in force as they glint off of the 20 Formula One cars that are displayed on the grid. We're looking at just over our television screens the Williams of Alex Albon, who's just behind the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. Little further up as well is Lewis Hamilton, who's down in 9th in the Mercedes. He'll have some work to do, Alice, won't he, to try and cut through the field?
Yeah, he certainly will. There's plenty of movers that will certainly want to make their way up the field. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, I'm sure they'll be slightly disappointed with their starting position today, as well as Lewis Hamilton, who had a pretty good start to, let's say, the practice days. Let me get my days right. On Thursday instead of Friday, because obviously a day earlier, and then just didn't seem to get it together yesterday. Struggling a little bit, said he went the wrong way with the setup.
That was the voice of Alice Powell, racing driver, alongside our lead commentator Harry Benjamin and the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Ben. All up in the commentary box, overlooking the starting grid, which is incredibly busy. I'm just by the Red Bull's box where Max Verstappen is going to lead the field away from. Christian Horner talking to the Thai billionaire as Max Verstappen just walks in front of me. Going to say hello to the Thai billionaire and his wife, Shalem Uvidia, co-owner and majority shareholder of Red Bull, flown in to support the team. He's been talking to team boss Christian Horner as well. I'm going to try and grab a word with Christian, of course, dominating the headlines this weekend and in the lead up to this weekend as well. He's just been brought over to me. I'm going to have a quick chat with Christian here to cheer on his driver, Max Verstappen. Good evening, Christian. Choosing to come onto the grid, was it a difficult decision to come onto the grid this evening?
No, not at all. We're here to go racing, and that's my job. So this is what we're focused on, and this is what we're here to do.
How difficult have the last few days been, not just for you, but also for your family?
Well, obviously it's been very testing for my family. Yeah, you know, we're very strong as a family, and our focus is here to go, you know, to focus on this race, start the season. The team have done an incredible job over the winter. To be starting on the pole position is the best place possible, and let's see what we can do in the race.
And a lot of people obviously will know what's been going on. Are you in a position to comment on whether those messages are real or not?
Well, look, I can't comment on messages from anonymous sender, so I'm not at liberty to talk about what was a private hearing. So as I say, focus is fully on this race, fully on the season ahead. And
you've got a car that can win this evening, and I guess throughout this season as well.
Well, look, I think it's going to be very close. I mean, Ferrari looked quick, Mercedes and McLaren and Aston Martin are all also there or thereabouts. So it's not just going to be about us.
Good luck today.
Well, that was Rosanna Tennant speaking to the Red Bull team principal and CEO Christian Horner on the grid after what has been a testing few days, and will continue to be Max Verstappen right by his RB20, the machine designed by Adrian Newey for this, the longest season in Formula One in 2024, having last-minute debriefs with his engineer, Gianpiero Lambiasi. The drivers now gearing up, putting their balaclavas on and getting into the zone. Alice, as a driver, what are your last thoughts and processes as you begin to get into your car ahead of a race?
Well, when they've had this winter break, which seems to be getting shorter and shorter year by year now. Let's say a couple of months for these drivers. It's, for me personally, it was always one of those where I was like, yes, excitement, more excitement than anything. Of course there will be nerves. You know, when people say, I'm not nervous at all, they're lying. I can guarantee there'll be some nerves, whether they're smaller than others, everyone will be nervous. And it's just, of course, your body preparing to go out and take part in competition. But they will have gone through everything with their engineer. I would have gone through everything with the strategists as well. So they will just be taking in, some of them might have a few routines. Just see Lewis Hamilton whizzing down the pit lane on his scooter to maybe have some last minute comfort breaks with his physio running on close behind him as well. We've got George Russell, who was having a good laugh with his engineer and his team as he was putting on his balaclava. And then there was Oscar Piastri that was very steely-eyed, leaning against the pit wall, putting his helmet on, and will probably actually be one of the first drivers to hop in the car. Actually, Hulkenberg's already in the car, so he is very keen. So they all have their routines, but it always is very, very exciting to get a season back underway again.
Yeah, most of the drivers with steely eyes, looking cool,
Harry, I'm
calm
just going to
and
jump
collected,
in.
Rosanna.
I've got Toto Wolff here, team principal of Mercedes. Toto, P3 for George. Was that unexpected yesterday?
I think we knew that we had a good car, but you know, there's 4 or 5 cars within a 10, so you can be 3rd or 7th.
And as you get a selfie with Simon Lazenby, are you expecting Lewis to be able to move forward? He said he sort of set the car up for race pace. Do you think it's compromised yesterday in favour of today?
Yeah, I think we shall see whether that really happened. We have a brand new car and it's still an exploration process.
And Lewis said he went in one direction, George went in the other. Is that going to be the case throughout the season? Do you think you're going to have to manage the drivers differently this year, I imagine?
Yeah, I think they are not too far apart from setups. I think, like you say, Lewis is very much on the race setup side, so let's see how it all pans out today. I'm excited.
Good luck this evening, Toto. Toto Wolff, team principal of Mercedes. 2 drivers, he's going to have to watch them a little bit this year, isn't he, guys? Because, of course, Lewis Hamilton moving to Ferrari at the end of the year, joining them in 2025. They don't want to give all their secrets away to the 7-time world champion as he heads off to Maranello.
No, not at all. I mean, it's such an interesting mentality, isn't it? If you are tuning in, and of course all the big off-season news that woke us all up from our winter slumber was that Lewis Hamilton had opted a get-out clause from his Mercedes contract and will sign with Ferrari. A lot of people maybe thinking he would turn up this year wearing red. No, he still has 1 year, 2024, his final season with Mercedes before he then makes the jump to Ferrari, where he'll team up alongside Charles Leclerc. It's going to be an interesting dynamic, Alice, particularly not only with Lewis and the team, but also that teammate dynamic with George Russell. Because
Harry, I've just got Zach Brown.
Go, Rosanna, go!
Zach, I guess the guys were a bit disappointed with yesterday's performance, but it feels like the car's got more performance than that for race time.
Yeah, it's very close. I think we could have gone a little bit better. I don't think either driver got the perfect lap in, but the perfect lap's always a bit hard to get. I think we've got good race pace, but I think so does everybody else around us, so it's going to be an exciting race.
Where do you reckon you might end up this evening? Could a podium be possible this evening?
I think we need a little bit of chaos at the front, because I think everyone's kind of on very, very similar speeds. So I think to drive through the field to the podium would be a challenge if everyone kind of does the same thing, but I wouldn't rule it out, and it's certainly the goal.
Much better than this time last year. I guess you're breathing a sigh of relief.
Different ball game this year.
Good luck this evening. Happy racing. Zach Brown, team principal and CEO of McLaren. An interesting session for Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Of course, Oscar no longer a rookie and expecting good things from him now. No more excuses, I guess, Alice.
Well, no, he's had a year under his belt. He would have got to learn the car, the tyre a lot better. He's clearly been working hard as well, from what I understand, with Mark Webber, who's his mentor and his manager over the off-season. So he'll be feeling pretty confident, but he's always seemed so chill, doesn't he, Oscar Piastri? He's such a cool, calm and collected guy. He's actually coming out of his shell a little bit, having a bit more banter now, I've seen on socials with Oscar, but he'll be pleased to be right there alongside Lando Norris, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure they've had a word with the 2 drivers, has Zach Brown, because it's never nice when you've got 2 of your cars charging down into turn 1 next to each other. But I'm sure they've been told to be nice and be kind to each other, guys.
I've got Mike Crack here, team principal of Aston Martin. Just a quick word on your performance yesterday in qualifying and what you're hoping for, not just this evening, but for this season, Mike.
Well, I think what we want is make a step forward compared to last season. Last year with 8 podiums, but we would like to come a bit closer to the fastest car. And if we manage that, then we can continue to fight for podiums and maybe our first win.
And Fernando performing incredibly well again, as almost we come to expect now.
You know, for the first race of the season, you never know what really to expect. So it was a nice result yesterday. So we knew we were not too far away, but that we would have been this close. It was nice to see.
Good luck this evening. There we are, Mike Crack, team principal of Aston Martin. Yes, an interesting year for them in 2023 with a bit of a plateau, Harry, hoping to keep their car development going throughout the season with no dips in form.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be the main goal. Fernando Alonso starting up in 6th for Aston Martin. Teammate Lance Stroll down in 12th. You're absolutely getting through all of the team principals, Rosanna. If you need to interrupt me, feel free. Keep going.
Sorry about that, Harry. I'm cutting you off in full flow. But,
no.
It's wonderful to be able to talk to so many of the team principals, get a bit of a flavour for how they're feeling. Not just for this evening. I think that's important to stress. You know, this is a long season. They've already got a sense of how they're going to go, I'm sure. And they know when the car development and the upgrade packages are going to be coming. So it's very nice to be able to talk to them just before the race starts.
No, absolutely. And the grid now starting to be cleared as we gear up towards lights out at the top of the hour, 3 o'clock UK time, 6 o'clock local time here in Bahrain. Under the lights, the sun has fully gone down now and the floodlights are illuminating this 5.4 kilometre, 3.3 mile track, 15 turns, 9 to the right and 6 to the left as we begin to get ready for what will be, as we've all been discussing, the longest season in Formula One history. I think one thing to note, Alice, that has changed this year, DRS, the drag reduction system. The flap on the rear wing opens when you're within a second of the car in front in the designated zones. That's now going to be available after 1 lap. That could be quite crucial, do you think, for overtaking?
Yeah, it could. I mean, it certainly has spiced up the races in the junior categories, but I'm just looking outside our commentary box window. I've referred to our trusty flags that we've been keeping an eye on this weekend. I could just about see them, even though it's dark outside. They're not near any floodlights, but there is a headwind down the main straight. Okay, it's not as strong as it has been over the course of the weekend, but if that does continue and it gets, let's say, gets a little bit stronger, that's going to make DRS even more important, because clearly if you're going to be behind the car that's pushing into that headwind and you've got the benefit of DRS, it certainly is going to be more effective. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the race.
It's also feeling a little colder, Alice. It's been chilly all week long, hasn't it, here? We've all had to bring jumpers, coats, jackets. When I think we thought we were coming to the Middle East, we were thinking we were going to be in the desert and that it would be nice and toasty and warm, but it's not been the case. And it's feeling cold this evening. So how does that affect things? And does that change throughout the race with the fuel sort of being burned away?
Yeah, I mean, actually looking at the temperatures, Rosanna, the track temperature yesterday during qualifying stayed, well, it started off at 21.7 degrees and then went down into Q3 at 21.1, and now it's 23.8, so it's not technically as cold, the track temperature, as it was yesterday. Of course, we are an hour earlier compared to what we had in qualifying, but that will just help with the degradation ever so slightly with the tyres. So, and of course, slightly with the burning of fuel, but the teams would have taken everything like that into account. But it's the degradation. If it was very warm like it was in free practice too, then the drivers would be struggling a lot more with the degradation. So I'm sure they'll be pleased it's a little bit cooler.
We've all headed off the starting grid now. We've left the 20 cars and drivers and their mechanics waiting for the start of the Bahrain Grand Prix, the first round of the 2024 F1 season. Harry Benjamin's your lead commentator this evening, alongside Alice Powell, racing driver, and BBC's chief F1 writer, Andrew Benson. Harry, it's time to go racing in 2024.
Thank you, Rosanna. We're looking forward to this. Around 100 days ago, the curtain fell on the 2023 Formula One season, and now the stage is well and truly set for the longest season in Formula One history. 24 races ahead of us, and it all starts here, under the lights, on the site of a former camel farm in the Manamar Desert. Now lies the Bahrain International Circuit, and just as they get set for their formation lap. 20 cars all on the grid, and they will do their formation lap, warming up their tyres. We are almost ready to go for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Let's take you through how they line up. On pole position, the 33rd of his career is Red Bull's Max Verstappen. He'll be joined by Charles Leclerc on the front row. George Russell is third in front of Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull rounds out the top 5. Then it's Fernando Alonso in 6th. Lando Norris is 7th in front of Oscar Piastri. Lewis Hamilton starts 9th in front of Nico Hülkenberg, who rounds out the top 10. 11th is Tsunoda in front of Stroll. Albon, Ricciardo, Magnussen make up the top 15. In 16th is Bottas in front of Zhou in 17th, and then it's Sargent in 18th, and on the back row it's the 2 Alpines of Ocon and Gasly. Formation lap underway. The grandstands are absolutely packed. In fact, there is a sea of orange in some of the grandstands. Such is the Dutch contingency here in Bahrain, coming to support their man, Max Verstappen. Alice Powell, racing driver, is alongside me. Alice, tyres are always crucial in Formula One. What can we expect, do you think, from the strategy ahead of the 57 laps of the Bahrain Grand Prix?
Well, it's looking to probably be a 2-stop race. Max Verstappen does have a brand new set of soft tyres that he can buy on. Everyone is starting on the soft tyre, so Max clearly thinks, I'm just going to cover myself. I do need to get this launch off the line. The soft tyre is of course the softest one available. Then you have usually the option to either go to the medium and hard. We're expecting drivers to then go to the hard tyre and then possibly switch, if they have available, onto the soft.
Yeah, that extra set of new softs that Max Verstappen has is sending shivers down the spines of the other teams. They're very worried about that. That can give him a 0.3 second advantage per lap over used softs. He's not using them at the start, but he's likely to deploy them later in the race, and it's going to make him really formidable against anybody on hards if he does so.
That's the voice of the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson. Alongside me is racing driver Alice Powell. My name is Harry Benjamin. Down on the ground for us in the pit lane is Rosanna Tennant, as Max Verstappen has already made his way around the last couple of corners. They'll now approach the grid and do a couple of burnouts, trying to lay down some extra rubber to grip up the starting grid spots. Verstappen weaving left, weaving right as he approaches the main straight now. The one thing to note as well, Alice, that we said about DRS, it's now activated after 1 lap. That could keep Max Verstappen within bay for a little bit longer at least.
It has. Charles Leclerc, he knows. He's had plenty of Grand Prix under his belt. He has got to hook a line on the back of Max Verstappen if he doesn't get in front of him off the start, and really make sure that he stays within that DRS zone.
Max Verstappen is already lined up in his grid spot. Alongside him is Charles Leclerc. Rosanna, the rest of the field now coming into view of that start-finish straight.
Absolutely, and how long are they going to leave Max waiting on the pole spots? They are taking their place on the grid. It's cool here in Bahrain, a slight flutter in the palm trees. The crowd are taking their seats in the grandstand. There's an excitement because we're about to see what everyone's got for 2024. It's a long season, don't forget, but this is exciting. We're about to find out the real pecking order.
Everybody starting on that soft compounder tyre. The quicker rubber might do better for a bit of grip as well. The last few points on the grid are being taken up. The 2 Saubers come into place. Behind them, the Williams of Logan Sargent, and then at the back, it's the 2 Alpines of Ocon and Gasly. On the front row is Charles Leclerc in the red Ferrari. On pole position is the reigning champion, Max Verstappen. It's all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing for the first of 24 races in this Formula One season. Good start from Leclerc. Verstappen has to cut across immediately to the inside line and defend. Leclerc forced round the outside, but Verstappen forces him further. Verstappen maintains the lead. Carnage further back. There's an Aston Martin that spun round and rejoined, but has fallen plumb last as they all navigate their way through turns 1, 2 and 3. Now coming into the right-hander of turn 4 as sparks fly. The 2 McLarens side by side. Norris on the outside, Piastri on the inside. It now concertinas up through the middle sector. The S's 5, 6 and 7, left, right and left again, and I think it might well have been Norris to win that one out. Sergio Perez has had a good start up into 4th position as well as he tries to chase down Russell in front of him, Leclerc is second, but it's Verstappen who leads the way, Alice.
Yeah, and actually Charles Leclerc thought he'd try the outside line, which then round turn 1, which then makes the inside line for turn 2. But of course, Max Verstappen was fully wise to that, and that has pretty much pushed Leclerc back now to 9/10 behind Max Verstappen. He has really got to try and make sure he stays within that 1 second, so he has the DRS on the next lap.
Yeah, but already, as you say, it's over 9.5 tenths of a second, the gap between Verstappen and Leclerc halfway through the opening lap of this Bahrain Grand Prix to kickstart the 2024 Formula One season. Verstappen leads Leclerc, Russell, Perez, Sainz the top 5, Alonso, Norris, Piastri, Hamilton, Tsunoda the top 10, Albon, Magnussen, Joe, Ricciardo, Sargent the top 15, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas, Stroll and Hülkenberg the top 20, and it definitely looks like it was Stroll and Hülkenberg who came to blows in that first corner as we now start lap 2. Hülkenberg reporting on the radio that he had a bit of damage, sparks flying further back in the pack. It's the RB of Daniel Ricciardo going down the inside of the American racer Logan Sargent in the Williams, and the RB holds firm. That's in the battle for 14th. Ricciardo ahead of Sargent at the moment. Sargent's gained some positions there. Ricciardo, after a grumpy qualifying for him, continuing to keep his nose in the battle, but Sargent cannot find a way through as it now starts the concertina up for him. Hulkenberg into the pits, Alice.
Yeah, Hulkenberg, and it's a slow change, an issue with putting on that front wing as he now slides his way and makes his way out back onto the track, albeit a good long way behind the field. Now back at the front, Charles Leclerc has not been able to keep within that 1 second, Harry. Gap has already opened to 1.2 seconds, and also Fernando Alonso, he has lost the DRS from Carlos Sainz in front, so he is under a lot of pressure from Lando Norris.
Yeah, so already 1.5 seconds that gap between Leclerc and Verstappen. Verstappen doing all he needs to do in those opening laps to make it count. Let's see how the rest of this unfolds, though. One pit stop already in the form of Nico Hülkenberg with damage to his front wing. He's switched on to the hard compound tyre. Real shame for Haas. Hülkenberg with a mega qualifying, started up in the top 10. His teammate, though, really disappointed with his qualifying. Kevin Magnussen was down in 15. He's made a good start and is up into 12. Lewis Hamilton is remained in 9th position. That's where he started and that's where he is at the moment. But a move down into turn 1 as Lando Norris dives down the inside and defending against Fernando Alonso, who's just behind him in 7th. Fernando Alonso with the DRS further up in the field as well. Russell going toe-to-toe with Charles Leclerc for second in this race with DRS aided. Russell gets through on Leclerc through the right-hander at turn 4. Russell holds on to that position. Nice move from the British racer. Russell second, Leclerc third, and Perez now all over the back of the Monegasque.
Beautiful move there by George Russell, and respectful racing from Charles Leclerc as well. He didn't force George Russell
look up
off.
from Leclerc as he goes into the left-hander at turn 10. That's going to be pain for that front left. And Perez, this is the sound of the Mexican, it's going to give him all the advantage he needs.
Yeah, a lock-up there, which is not ideal, but he's really struggling, isn't he, Leclerc? He's really struggling at the start of this race. Time-wise, he is around about 2-3 tenths off what Russell is doing, and a good half a second more than that actually, compared to what Max Verstappen is doing out front. So Sergio Perez in the Red Bull is charging down the Scuderia-coloured Ferrari.
So that turn 1 incident involving cars 18, so Stroll and Hülkenberg right at the very start of this race that gave Hülkenberg a broken front wing has been noted for causing a collision by race control. Lap 4 of 57 for the Bahrain Grand Prix. It's Verstappen in the Red Bull who leads. Russell, Leclerc and Perez in a great battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th. And then it's pretty tight throughout the rest of the field, actually. They all slam onto the brakes coming into turn 1. Sainz rounds out the top 5. Norris now in front of Alonso, but Alonso in the Aston Martin is keeping him within DRS range, but also having to look in his mirrors because Oscar Piastri in the other McLaren, back for a second season with McLaren, is only half a second behind. Then comes Lewis Hamilton 9th, Yuki Tsunoda in the RB quietly up into the top 10 as we get another look at the start. And it was a decent start from the front row. Verstappen immediately cutting across to keep Leclerc behind, Alice.
Verstappen actually had a little bit of a wiggle. He was pointing his car to the inside of the track, and lucky for him, that wiggle, that traction, it would have been traction with loss, didn't hinder him too much, and the sound you can hear now is riding on board with Lance Stroll, who got a beautiful start, charging on past a Haas and then having a little look down the inside of several cars in front. He gets down the inside, does he, of Lewis Hamilton? No, thinks about it, but there was the contact from behind, and he did a very good job, actually, did Lance Stroll, to catch his clutch there, but it was Hulkenberg that was sinking down through the pack, and he just locks up. That was quite clumsy, actually, from Hulkenberg. Locks up ever so slightly. No puffs of smoke, but just didn't get the car stopped and didn't take into account the concertina effect into turn 1.
And I can tell you now that incident has been reviewed by race control. No further investigation going to happen between Stroll and Hulkenberg, but it did get quite tight into that turn 1. Even Valtteri Bottas in the Sauber getting a little bit of a knock too as Hulkenberg slowed. Rosanna, let's head down to you in the pits. Not much action so far, bar Nico Hulkenberg.
Well, no, not too much action down in the pit lane, I have to say, but a few excited faces in the Mercedes garage when George Russell made that move on Charles Leclerc, showing that the Mercedes has got some pace, especially if you add a bit of DRS into the mix, which makes me question why Hamilton's not able to make much progress. Still down in P9 for the British driver at the moment. And what about Ferrari, guys? Is it just this tyre that they're not liking? And perhaps when the pit stops start happening and they switch, I assume, onto a hard tyre, they'll feel a little more comfortable. That really looked like an easy pass for George Russell, even though, of course, he had DRS. More to come, I'm sure. Fred Vasseur, the team principal of Ferrari, will hope for his team this evening.
Yeah, it was nicely done by Russell. He's 4 seconds back from Verstappen now. He leads this race. Then comes the battle for the final podium position with Leclerc 3/10 in front of Perez. Sainz right behind him as well. This battle brewing really nicely. Also worth mentioning as well, Alonso has fallen behind Piastri now. Piastri up into 7th. Alonso down in 8th. Hamilton right behind him. Tsunoda rounds out the top 10.
Charles Leclerc has been on the radio already, dobbing in his fellow racer George Russell for track limits, and we are getting some warnings and track limits being deleted as well. So Norris actually has had a couple already. So the drivers need to keep an eye now, but it looks like Charles is just clawing his way back up to George Russell. Of course, though, he has got the help of DRS.
I just want to point out at the front, Max Verstappen is now pulling out about a second a lap on the last 2 or 3 laps. He's 3.9 seconds ahead after 5 laps. I think that's adio Max.
But the battle for 2nd and 3rd is still brewing, so let's keep that alive. Indeed, though, it has to be said that the McLarens have been moving up the field, and we're just getting another look at how Piastri managed to get past Alonso. It was using DRS, bit of toe, dived down the inside at the last moment into turn 1, and I'm not sure there was much Alonso could do about that one. There's a point, isn't there, as where you pick, is it worth the fight? And I think Alonso wasn't really thinking it was worth it at that stage.
No, Alonso's already under pressure, actually, from Lewis Hamilton, and then Yuki Tsunoda and Alexander Albon are not too far behind either. So instead of wasting time, we've still got a long way left to go in this race. We're only on lap 6. He needs to try and maintain his pace, or increase his pace, should I say, but also look after the tyres as well.
I'm surprised Alonso's struggling as badly as this. His race paces look decent this weekend, and before the race, other teams were pointing back to last year's race here, and how good his time management was. That was, to be fair, after the first stint, once they got into the harder tyres. So either there's something wrong with the Aston Martin, or it's not as quick as they thought it would be, or maybe it's just not happy on the soft tyres and he might come back a bit later into the race. Let's find out.
Lap 7 of 57 in the Bahrain Grand Prix. It's Verstappen who leads by over 4.5 seconds from Russell, Leclerc, Perez and Sainz, the top 5. Norris, Piastri, Alonso, Hamilton, Tsunoda, the top 10. Albon, Magnussen, Zhou, Sargent, Ricciardo, the top 15. Ocon, Gasly, Stroll, Bottas and Hulkenberg, the top 20. We kicked off this race. It was Verstappen on pole position. Had a little bit of defending to do going down into turn 1 from Charles Leclerc, but it was writing on the wall, and Verstappen has managed to maintain that lead and eke it out further. Let's hear from Carlos Sainz.
Hey, good to know.
Yeah, there's not much your engineer can do at the moment, but Sainz looks a bit more comfortable in that Ferrari compared to his teammate Charles Leclerc, who has closed the gap up to George Russell. Then it's Perez half a second behind, and then Carlos Sainz is only 4 tenths behind, and we've got a battle, Harry. It looks like Sergio Perez is going to get the run alongside Charles Leclerc heading down into turn 11. Does he make the move stick? Yes, he does.
And he's got the other Ferrari trying to get through as well. We just heard Carlos Sainz on the radio saying he's quicker than the guys in front of him, his teammate Leclerc and Perez, and that will spark perhaps some movement on the Ferrari pit wall as Perez with DRS gets down the inside of Charles Leclerc and up into third spot. Perez now on the podium and going to try and chase down George Russell. This is the sound of Carlos Sainz as he breaks for the final two right-handers that complete this 5.4 kilometre circuit. He's got his teammate Charles Leclerc in front of him, and Carlos Sainz will have DRS, but so will Charles Leclerc from Perez in front. The drag reduction system makes you go perhaps about a 6/10 advantage of the car in front of you, forcing Perez to defend the inside line, but Leclerc's not close enough. Sainz can't get close either. It's status quo for the time being. Perez third, Leclerc fourth, Sainz fifth.
I'm wondering if Leclerc had a lockup. He'd already had one on lap 2 of this race down into turn 10. I wonder if he's had another one. So we are going to have a little look. The sound you can hear now is riding on board with Sergio Perez. Let's have a little look. Does he? He does. So he has another lockup, does Charles Leclerc, and then he was just a sitting duck on the exit. He knew he couldn't run off the brake because he had to give himself at least a bit of a chance to try and cover that position, but it wasn't enough, unfortunately, for him, and through went Sergio Perez. So a pretty much easy move, a simple move there for Perez.
Lewis Hamilton down in ninth, still within half a second, or is that now just eked out to about 7/10 of a second to Fernando Alonso, who is in front of him. Hamilton not able to make progress from his starting position as it currently stands. It's really tight further down in the pack as well. Kevin Magnussen in 12th, and the Haas currently leads almost the entire rest of the field. Joe in the Sauber is half a second behind him. Then comes Sargent in the Williams, Ricciardo, Ocon and Gasly also right there with him. No points up for grabs for them for the time being, only pride at stake as we cross the line for lap number 9 of 57. Verstappen now with a 6.5 second lead from George Russell. Then comes Sergio Perez. Carlos Sainz with a DRS is in 5th, looking down the inside of his teammate Charles Leclerc, who has another lockup going into turn 1. That front right tyre just snatches steam, erupts from it. He keeps it locked in, keeps it going. Sainz right behind, closes up in the run. Now down to turn 4. DRS, the rear wing flap opens and then shuts under braking. Can't get close enough as they move into the middle section of this lap. But Alice, I think Charles Leclerc is struggling a little bit here with his car.
This car is snaking on the exit of turn 4, having a lockup, whether it's the front left, front right. Leclerc's team are now on the radio to him saying, we are going plan A, so whatever plan A is, that's the one they're going with. But I expect, I wouldn't be surprised if we'll hear a radio message very soon from Carlos Sainz saying, I'm faster, guys, stop hindering me. But of course, he's sitting in the dirty air of his teammate, which will cause degradation to his tyres, especially those front tyres. But Charles Leclerc will want to try and stay in front, but certainly looking at it from my point of view, Harry, it does certainly look like Leclerc is struggling with his grip there in the Ferrari, especially compared to the sister car.
Leclerc started this race in 2nd and has since gone backwards. Both the Ferraris now in 4th and 5th. Leclerc ahead of Sainz. They're getting very close though. Almost reminds me a little bit of their epic battle in Monza last year, going toe to toe and happy to fight it out. Getting a little bit too close for comfort at times for team principal Fred Vasseur, watching on from the pit wall. They didn't come to blows that time around, but they're still hunting each other down, left, right and centre. Once again, we cross the line for lap 10 under the lights here at the Bahrain International Circuit, and Lewis Hamilton now with DRS is making a move to the inside of Fernando Alonso. By the time he gets into the braking zone, he's ahead of the Spaniard. His former teammate gets good drive out of turn 1, but Alonso will get a little bit more as he tries to keep up with him, and now Alonso will get the DRS down to turn 4. Hamilton moves to the inside to defend. Alonso can't do anything. Hamilton keeps that position and moves up into 8th spot. Alonso now down to 9th, but is sticking with the Mercedes for the time being.
Yeah, we're seeing some pit stops now.
and that is a Williams that has pulled off the track. It's Logan Sargent who has pulled off. Now, where is that coming into? Let's have a look. Oh, Sargent was down in 13th.
To me.
It is into the right-hander. He's gone straight on. Can't see any obvious damage there, but he's. Let's hear from him on the radio.
James Vowles is on the pit wall looking very puzzled and confused. He's either locked up and gone straight on, but he's rolling backwards there, so we'll keep an eye on it. It is in a dangerous place. Personally, I think it's a dangerous place. Whether they decide to send out a virtual safety car or a safety car, as we have, he's got going again. Okay,
yeah, he's still
got
moving,
going again,
isn't he?
so maybe he locked up or had an issue somewhere along the line. It was very bizarre, so we'll wait and see what we can find out about that. But the Ferraris are battling, Harry.
They are indeed. Sainz much closer this time around to his teammate Leclerc. Sparks fly. Sainz on the inside. Leclerc on the outside as he head down into turn one. It's so close, so close. They nearly touch wheels. They keep it clean. Sainz comes out on top. He gets the DRS to boot. Sainz makes the move stick, but my word, that was close. Sainz up into fourth. Leclerc now down to fifth.
Leclerc did not make that easy, did he, for his teammate? And Ferrari were probably perched right on their edge of their seats, watching their two drivers heading down into turn one there, and rightly so, because that was so close to contact, but they managed to keep it clean as Sainz has already started to streak away from Leclerc, who really isn't happy. 0.8 of a second, and that really is only 5 or 6 corners later. Meanwhile, Perez has now steamed up to the back of George Russell. Half a second separates the Mercedes and the Red Bull driver at the moment, and of course he's within that precious, that all-important DRS zone.
Lap 11 of 57, then it's Verstappen who leads Russell, Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, the top 5. Then it's Norris, Piastri, Hamilton, Alonso, Tsunoda, the top 10. And we're just getting another look, and that's the sound you can hear of Sainz making that move down the inside. Leclerc pushing him all the way to the apex, not giving that one over too easy for his teammate, who will depart the Ferrari team at the end of the year. And we're also getting another look at why Logan Sargent ended up off the track on the runoff in turn 4. Looked like he just locked up that right front and came to a stop, Alice.
Yeah, I mean, I can't work out why he did that, but we've got our first pit stops, Harry.
Yeah, pit stops happening. Let's head to Rosanna Tennant.
Absolutely, Ferrari just making a pit stop there as Charles Leclerc comes in to get rid of those tyres. He's obviously been struggling with them. He's now at pit exit. He's following out behind the Mercedes of George Russell, who rejoins just ahead of the Sauber. Nice and clean stop there. Charles Leclerc hopefully happy now on the hard tyre, the white tyre. Will that help the Ferrari driver propel through the field? It's looking tricky out there for him this evening, isn't it? As George Russell gets a little bit close with Valtteri Bottas, I think.
Yeah, in the fluoro green Sauber, Bottas sparring with the man that replaced him at that very team in Mercedes a few years ago, just out of the pit lane. Bottas, who has not pitted on that soft confident tyre, he's not in the battle for position, tried it on with Russell, but Russell, with outright pace advantage, has now made his position stick. Russell came out in 12th place behind Gasly. He's got a couple second gap behind Gasly, who's in the Alpine in 11th. So Leclerc then also came and pitted as well in the Ferrari. He's gone and come out of the pits down in 14th position on that hard compounder tyre, Alice.
And Leclerc was off again. He locked up and ran deep into turn 10. He switched now onto the hard tyre. So he's really not liking turn 10 and that lockup. And it looks like, to me, Harry, that Bottas has got some slight front wing damage, as in the pits now comes Sergio Perez. So that allows Carlos Sainz a little bit of clean air. Lando Norris boost up into P3 as well. Oscar Piastri, I can see coming into the pits. And also, is that Lewis Hamilton as well?
Yeah, Rosanna, more action, and Hamilton looked like he wasn't let away too quickly there.
Yeah, it was a little sluggish from Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes team. He's back going now into the fast lane in the pit lane. It's all go in the pit lane. Cars diving in left, right and centre. Plenty of action for the mechanics to be getting on with. And after the winter break, let's hope they're not too rusty, Harry. Otherwise, we might have a little bit of finger trouble.
Perez actually just had a lockup there coming out of the pit lane, really trying to charge down to try and get ahead of George Russell. So he's already maybe snagged his front right tyre there and actually dropped back from George Russell, and will soon be in the clutches, if he's not careful, of Charles Leclerc, who is still struggling in his Ferrari. So the sound you can hear now is on board with Charles Leclerc, and he again just locks up going into turn 10, carrying way too much speed, and actually was lucky not to hit the back of Bottas in the Sauber. So he's carried on nicely, but George Russell now has come up a little bit of traffic in front of him. He's got Daniel Ricciardo to try and manoeuvre his way through, and Lando Norris has just been called to box by his team.
Yeah, Norris at the moment filtering up into third. He'll then come into the pits. Lap 14 of 57. So this is around about the time we expected these first pit stops. Initially penciled around lap 11 and lap 12. So that's happening at the moment. As here we have a little bit of a move. Russell trying to regain his position as he overtakes the RB of Daniel Ricciardo. Gets himself up into 7th spot on that hard compound of tyre. Lando Norris into the pits. The hard tyre goes on. Nice tidy stop from the McLaren crew, who send him on his way pretty sharpish. Sergio Perez down the main straight has now caught right up to the back of the Mercedes of George Russell. The DRS was activated, it slammed shut under braking, but Perez in that Red Bull, after a bit of a disappointing qualifying, is now clawing his way back into this race. Russell into the right-hander of turn 4, defends massively, goes deep. That allows Perez to get the inside line, but Perez has a little snap on the steering wheel. They almost have contact, but they just about avoid each other. Perez makes his move on George Russell, gets up into 6th on the road, but that will be net second once all the pit stops have filtered through. So Perez in the Red Bull, now on the hard compound tyre, having pitted. Russell also pitted on the hard compound tyre, but has fallen behind Mercedes. And that was a nice little battle there with DRS, but it got quite close, Alex.
Yeah, Perez threw out and set out the trap for George Russell, and he wiggled straight into it. Easy move there. He ran too deep, and that allowed Perez to get the cutback, and through he went. And Carlos Sainz now, he's gonna box from 2nd place, 12.2 seconds behind from Max Verstappen.
Yep, Sainz coming into the pits. Rosanna.
Carlos slams on the brakes, a little bit of smoke puffing up as he comes into the pit box at Ferrari. The mechanics are waiting, the softs are off, the hards are on, and it's a nice, quick and clean stop for Ferrari. A pat on the back from one of their gunners to another teammate, and Sainz is back on the road. Seemingly much more comfortable than his teammate this evening.
Yep, Tsunoda also coming into the pits for RB, and that now allows Alonso and Albon, who are now filtering up into the top 3 positions. The Ferraris come out of the pit lane oh so close. Leclerc in front of Sainz there. Sainz having overtaken Leclerc. Let's hear from him.
I just cannot get out of front locking everywhere.
I cannot get out of front locking everywhere, is what Charles Leclerc is reporting back on the radio. Leclerc, who got overtaken by Carlos Sainz before pitting, Ferrari giving Leclerc the early pit stop, has now been able to re-emerge in front of his teammate Carlos Sainz. That is one thing in itself, but is it a case of, well, Leclerc was really struggling on these tyres anyway? It might be a slam dunk for Sainz to retake that move in just a few laps' time.
Well, he's not just been struggling on these tyres, he's been locking up on the soft tyre as well, so it doesn't matter what compound he's on at the moment. The main tool he's got to his use to try and help reduce that front locking is, of course, the brake bias. Usually you'll wind it forward to have more bite on the front brakes, and then if you've got front locking, you'll wind it slightly back further rearwards. I'm sure, of course, he would have tried that, and the team would have said how much or how far he needs to go with that. Clearly struggling still, though, with all of those, as Alonso is being called into box as well. But yeah, I can't see it being too far or too soon until Carlos Sainz makes his move past his teammates.
Alonso into the pits, as is Alex Albon. I think they're our last 2 stoppers before Verstappen. Rosanna.
Absolutely, Fernando Alonso heading back out into the fast lane. The mechanics doing their job well, as then we have Williams coming in just in front of him. They managed to avoid each other nicely, so still more action in the pit lane. It's all go, Harry.
Yeah, everyone has now pitted with the exception of Max Verstappen, who now leads this race by over 30 seconds, 31.3 to be precise. It's Sergio Perez who has the fastest lap time so far. Everybody moving onto the hard compound tyre. Verstappen still out there on the soft compound tyre and seemingly going well for the time being. His last lap around was a 1:37.0, so he's a little bit slower than the others, but that will, well, those on the freshest softs, on the freshest hards, I should say, but that will be Verstappen, I'm sure, in management mode. He doesn't have any threat of any kind at the current moment in time. Lap 16 then of 57, and the two Ferraris are at it again. Sainz now back behind Leclerc, but Sainz seems the faster of the two Ferraris, tries a move down the inside going into turn 11. Tricky to make that work. He doesn't. Leclerc retakes that racing line. Leclerc bullish here with his teammate, despite the Monegasque struggling with his tyres quite publicly, is not willing to move over and let Sainz through as easy as he could with his teammate. This is the sound of Carlos Sainz up through the gears before he then slams onto the brakes into the right-hander, the double right-handers that see off one lap of the Bahrain International Circuit. He'll now get the aid of the drag reduction system, which gives you about 0.6 of a second pace advantage on the car in front, but Leclerc will also get DRS from the car in front of him. It's a late dive to the inside for Sainz on his teammate. Will he make it stick? He does. Leclerc doesn't fight that one as hard. I wonder if he was taken a bit surprised there. It was late in the day from Sainz, who will now get DRS again in the run to turn 4, the right-hander. So will Leclerc, but Sainz has the advantage, holds the position. Sainz 4th, Leclerc 5th.
Nice move by Carlos Sainz, who's even making adjustments on his steering wheel whilst going flat out over 150 mile an hour through turn 12. So impressive stuff, and clearly feeling quite calm and comfortable, but he's already drawn in, and he's already raking in, actually, George Russell. So I can't see, Harry, it'll be long before we're going to see another move by that man Carlos Sainz, who's going to sail past his teammate. We're just seeing the replay, a little lock up again from Charles Leclerc as well.
Yeah, they'll be, I'm already imagining the debrief on that one in Ferrari post-race for Leclerc's tyre woes. Right, Verstappen then into the pits. He's got a 30-second advantage. The Red Bull mechanics get to work. All 4 tyres changed. A little bit of a sluggish getaway, actually, from Red Bull. It's about a 2.9 second stop. Around about 22.5 seconds is the pit time loss. So he should come out well and truly in front of his own teammate Perez. Let's hear Leclerc.
Going to the right when I'm braking.
Okay, we are checking.
Like this, I cannot fight. It's dangerous.
So Leclerc saying there that when he's braking, his car is moving fully to the right. He cannot carry on like this. Meanwhile, his teammate, who just re-overtook him, is now fighting with George Russell. Tries to move down into turn 1. Can't make it work, but Russell's Mercedes looking a little bit unstable in the rear. This is the sound of Sainz following in the tow of Russell. Sparks fly right in the face of Carlos Sainz. He sweeps round the outside into the right-hander of turn 4. Sainz, a man on a mission here, up into 3rd spot now in front of Russell. Leclerc 5th.
Leclerc is struggling. Could be corner weights, potentially. Maybe he's whacked a curb at some point as well. But I just want to go back to Verstappen's pit stop that I noticed, Harry. We got the opportunity to see from an overhead camera. When he was stationary and the wheels were off, the car was still rolling forward. Now, Max, of course, would he lifted in the air, but it looked like maybe an issue possibly with the jacks weren't locking the car in place, and it was moving forward ever so slightly. And that's why the drivers, it's so important for them to land on their marks, because it's synchronized for those mechanics taking the wheel on and taking the wheel off, and putting the wheel on. So for them, I would say that's probably one of the reasons why that pit stop was slow. But I'm just looking at the front of Carlos Sainz's helmet there, and he's got a little bit of oil. And actually on the replay that the onboard camera we saw, didn't we? It's almost looked like fluid, possibly from the back of that Mercedes, flying up and going onto the back of Carlos, out of the back of George Russell.
Well, those Mercedes, both of them, have really been hitting the ground hard all weekend. The most amount of sparks are coming from both Mercedes. They've been saying, well, for ahead of qualifying, they raised it slightly to just hopefully not take as much wear. Because if you remember, we had this issue on the wooden plank on the bottom of the F1 cars. At the bumpy Austin track last year, Leclerc and Hamilton taking the bumps a few too many times, and it actually wore away that resin on the bottom, and it meant that they got disqualified from the race. It's like Mercedes has to be wary about, but those sparks in the face of Sainz might well mean he needs to rip off and have a new bit of visor on his helmet there. But Sainz clearly not affecting him too much. He's got the fastest lap, currently in third as we start. We're in lap 19 of 57. Verstappen, Perez sides the top three. Russell, Leclerc, Norris, Piastri, Hamilton, Alonso and Joe the top 10. Rosanna.
Yes, and I've had an update from Williams telling me what happened to Logan Sargent. Of course, we saw him off track and vocal on the radio. In actual fact, there was an issue with his steering wheel. They're going to investigate it after the race, but for now they've changed the steering wheel on his car and he's continuing in the race. At this stage of the season, you've got to be out there, you've got to be learning your car, and it's a big season for Logan Sargent, don't forget, trying desperately to keep a seat in Formula One.
Williams have changed their steering wheel this year, haven't they? For the first time in a long time. They've always had the dash, the digital display embedded on the chassis in front, but not on the wheel like every other team. But now they've incorporated that digital dash into their steering wheel. And I'm not saying that's the cause of any kind of problem, but it's worth noting that's quite a big change for Williams in their design philosophy, particularly around their steering wheel. Sargent now plumb last and quite a way off the back of the field. His teammate Alex Albon in 14th position, behind Magnussen, in front of Ocon. I think we just saw Esteban Ocon as well, going very wide, coming through the left-hander of turn 10, or actually might have been the RB of Daniel Ricciardo, actually behind Ocon it was. And much like Leclerc, couldn't get it turned into that left-hander, Alice.
Yeah, he didn't opt to push the brake any harder. He thought, I'm just going to let it run. He didn't want to cause himself a lockup. And actually, I noticed that he still activated his DRS, even though he was way off circuit. But Leclerc is catching now. He is pulling in George Russell. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, gets over 7 seconds now ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. Fastest lap last time round, and a good 0.8 of a second quicker than Perez and 1 second quicker than Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, Leclerc's 1.1 off the back of Russell. Leclerc's last lap are 1:36.8. Sainz's last lap is 1:36.2. So last time around, he was 0.6 off his own teammate. So Leclerc is maybe slightly reeling in Russell, but Sainz is pulling away for a podium position at the moment. It's Verstappen now with the fastest lap, 1:35.160. He has 7.3 seconds clear of his teammate Sergio Perez. It's a Red Bull 1-2. Carlos Sainz is third. Then comes Russell in fourth, Leclerc in fifth. The two McLarens of Norris and Piastri are sixth and seventh. Lewis Hamilton, who started in ninth, hasn't made much progress in this race, only up into eighth spot. Alonso in the Aston Martin, we thought had better pace. Perhaps an issue, perhaps they're not as quick as they thought, but Alonso at the moment pretty much on his own in ninth. Then comes Joe in the Sauber, who'll be pleased to get himself up into the top 10 for the time being. Reminder, points are rewarded all the way down to 10th place. It's 25 for the win, all the way down to 1 point for 10th place. Tsunoda in the RB is 11th, Stroll is 12th in the other Aston Martin. Then comes Magnussen in the Haas in 13th, Albon in the Williams is 14th, ahead of the Alpine of Ocon in 15th. The other RB of Ricciardo, 16th, Bottas in the Sauber, 17th. Alpines, Gasly is 18th, Hülkenberg is 19th, and this is the sound you can hear. He's come into the pits, and of course it's an earlier pit stop for Nico Hülkenberg, who's had to throw his strategy and rip it all up because of that little incident with Lance Stroll into turn one. He went to the back of the Canadian racer, spun the Canadian round, gave Hülkenberg front wing damage. That forced him to come into the pits early doors, and unfortunately from a top 10 starting position for the German, now finds himself languishing at the back with only Logan Sargent behind him. The RB of Daniel Ricciardo now back on track, making a move on the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. Nice little fight this between Ocon and Ricciardo. Ricciardo making the move, stick into the right-hander of turn 4. Alpine, who started this race on the back row in 19th and 20th, well, it's an improvement so far, 16th and 18th, and they're in the mix with their other teams around them at least. So they'll be pleased with that, Alice, and it underlines that it is tight in the mid to back of the pack.
It's tight all the way through the field, I guess, if you're going to exclude Max Verstappen, who continues to set some good lap times, and his consistency is just unreal. Super impressive from Max Verstappen. But yep, the Alpines have moved off the back of the field, albeit maybe with the help of Nico Hulkenberg damaging his front wing at the start, and of course Logan Sargent having that rather bizarre lockup down at turn 4 and going straight on. But they've all settled down a little bit, at least for now, on lap 22, Harry.
Yeah, lap 22, Verstappen leads Perez, and there's a bit of action behind the Red Bull garage. Rosanna.
Yeah, Paul Monahan, the performance engineer at Red Bull, has just run out of the back of the Red Bull garage, run around the corner to meet a Pirelli engineer, and has been busy looking at an iPad, which I'm sure contains a lot of data about how the tyres are performing. Of course, we've just had the first stint, so Pirelli will have a lot of data as to how the tyres are behaving. Paul's had a good look. He's now run back into the garage. So, interesting. You kind of think Red Bull are all serene and everything's going well, but you start to understand there's so much going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and you can never rest on your laurels. Here's Perez.
Super quiet, man. Stick, love them. Shout. You need to shout.
That's Sergio Perez saying to his engineer, Hugh Bird, I can't hear you. You need to shout at me over the radio. So Perez with some radio problems, and in fact we've been barely able to hear them all weekend either, have we? So maybe it's us and the teams having this issue, and Hugh Bird on the pit wall having a little change of battery perhaps in his team radio, Alice?
Yeah, they're having a little fumble there with the radios, whether to turn up the volume, probably a change of battery, Harry, but it is frustrating as a driver when your engineer's speaking quiet, or you've got a technical issue like that, and you're trying to concentrate, but also trying to hear and concentrate even more to what your engineer is saying. But Perez is keeping the gap nicely, I would say, to Carlos Sainz. Last time round, near enough matched each other on time. The gap between the two drivers at the moment stands at 2.3 seconds. Perez is near enough 10 seconds behind Max Verstappen, who's having a rather quiet race, I think is one way to put it, out in front of the field.
Well, if the biggest problem Red Bull have right now is the volume on the team radio button, then I think they'll be all right. Verstappen with almost 10-second advantage over his teammate Sergio Perez. Then comes Sainz in the Ferrari third. That's your top 3 as it currently stands. Russell, Leclerc the top 5. Norris, Piastri, Hamilton, Alonso, Zhou the top 10. And they are your current point scorers. Tsunoda, Stroll, Magnussen, Albon, Ricciardo the top 15. Ocon, Bottas, Gasly, Hulkenberg and Sargent, the 20 drivers, all still in this race. We had a little bit of action, a little bit of contact early doors between Stroll and Hulkenberg, but outside of that, we've had a few too close for comfort overtakes in the form of the Ferrari teammates, but outside of that, it's all been kept fairly clean, and there's not too many track limit violations now. There were at the start of this race, but I suppose as it's evened out slightly and spread out, they're not pushing as much the limits of this Bahrain International Circuit.
Taking their time with managing, well, I say taking their time, they're not going to be taking their time, they're still pushing, but making sure they look after these tyres. Now, options that are really available. You could decide to have a 3-stopper if you wish, depending on how your hard tyre is feeling. You could put on another set of hard tyres, or if you're Max Verstappen, who's got a brand new set of soft tyres available, he could put on a soft tyre. So I expect around about anywhere between sort of lap 37 to 45, we may see some drivers dive into the pits, of course, all depending on when they did box for their first tyre change and how the car is handling and how the tyre is degrading beneath them, as we continue to have a little look at this battle raging between a Williams and a Haas, Harry.
Yeah, closest battle out on track that we've got at the moment. It's over 13th and 14th. Kevin Magnussen, the Danish driver in the Haas, occupies 13th. Alex Albon in the Williams. The Thai driver is just behind him in 14th. Even with DRS effect, though, that Williams can't quite catch up to the Haas in the straight line, which is an interesting change of characteristic for Williams. So good they have been historically in a straight line. Right now, Albon not able to close in on Magnussen for the time being, but it is still the closest gap on the track we have at the moment. 0.7 of a second roughly between Magnussen and Albon. Let's head back down to Rosanna. News on Mercedes.
Yeah, not all plain sailing for the Silver Arrows this evening, Harry. We are approaching the halfway mark, aren't we? And it's all seemingly pretty good reliability-wise for the 20 drivers out there. No safety cars, no virtual safety cars. And so the Mercedes drivers have been told to lift and coast. So is that because we haven't had any stoppages or slowing down the field yet? Or is it because they're going to run out of fuel? Or perhaps they've even got cooling issues? It's weird because it's actually quite chilly out here. So I'm not really sure what that's down to. I'm going to keep on listening in. Oh, okay, more problems.
I think you said it perfectly there, Rosanna. More problems. A seat broken for Lewis Hamilton.
That's not ideal, is it?
No, it is not. Hamilton currently down in 8th spot at the moment in front of Alonso. Alonso's about 9.5 seconds behind for the time being. So let's keep an eye on how Mercedes treat these ongoing conditions. Hamilton 8th, Russell 4th at the moment. Battles out on track at the moment, though, still remain between Magnussen and Albon over 13th and 14th. But now Zhou and Tsunoda a little further up are battling between 10th and 11th. Tsunoda trying to get himself back into the points. This is the sound of Alex Albon, though, and you've just spotted something on the steering wheel, Alice.
Yeah, so we're getting the perfect view from the camera that's inside his helmet, and a big red banner flashing across the front of his steering wheel, on the dash, should I say. Car too hot. He's backed out, and actually he's pulling out of the dirty air from the Haas of Kevin Magnussen in front, just to allow some fresh, clean air into the air intake, into the side pods of his car as the Williams team look on. Let's have a look now as he heads down the main straight, deciding not to pull out this time. He's staying in the tow, having a look down the inside of Kevin Magnussen. No, not quite close enough. But he's putting him really under pressure, but he's got to keep an eye on those temperatures, Harry.
This is fascinating, though, because Williams, that's been their advantage over everybody else in the last few years, that straight line speed. And normally, if he had that advantage still, he wouldn't be in front of Magnussen anymore. He would have breezed past him and wouldn't be affected by the heat coming off the back of that Haas, especially as they go through the mid-corners. So we'll see how long Albon can realistically stay behind Magnussen. He's about half a second behind him at the moment, but there may well come a point where that car does overheat and he has to back off the pace and get out of the immediate turbulent air behind that Haas. The same is happening between Tsunoda and Zhou. Bit more at stake for those two with that precious final point up the grab. Zhou and the Sauber having a great run so far, currently looking set to score that point, but Tsunoda is keeping him honest. The Chinese driver versus the Japanese driver, the Sauber versus the RB. Both drivers scoring points here in their rookie seasons as well. Will be vying for that precious points for those two teams, Sauber and RB, in that mid-pack where points are getting more and more precious, with particularly how strong the front runners are these days. If there's no reliability issues, last year we saw them occupying pretty much near enough the entire top 10. And so for these kind of teams, they're fighting for scraps. They're fighting for 9th and 10th. They're fighting for 2 points. They're fighting for 1 point. But that is so crucial in the long run.
It certainly is, especially when it comes down to the Constructors' Championship at the end of the year. Those points make important prizes.
We need blue 3, position 4, blue 3, position 4. That's, I can't, none of my dash is working because of this screen.
Maybe it is this new screen that's not quite working for Williams.
Yeah, so I'm just looking there, and I have seen Albon try and move the blue dial. So there is a blue dial with a set of numbers that will be the dial that he's needing to change, blue 3, and at the moment he's trying to see what it is on. I think he has switched it to 3 actually, but every time he's making those adjustments on his wheel, the screen almost goes blank. It has 4 squares, effectively 4 blocks on his screen, so he's struggling there, and I wonder if they're trying to get him to make these adjustments because the car is hot, or maybe it's just a malfunction with the steering wheel and the car's not hot at all.
Well, still behind Magnussen is Albon. More broken seat news down at Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton. Rosanna's got more.
Lewis sounded very dramatic, didn't he, with that radio message? My seat is broken. The team are telling me it might not be as dramatic as it sounds. It could just be a small crack, as we see Lewis Hamilton going wide off the track a little bit. Would it be affecting him, Alice? How much can you really feel, even if it's a small crack in the seat? Of course, it's not like a little chair that they're sitting on in there. It's all around their body, isn't it? So how much does that affect you?
It's moulded to your body, and I can tell you when I've driven with a broken seat before, and it's not nice because you're moving. The drivers are strapped into these cars as tight as possible, so you can feel every single movement of the car. And then let's say, your seat does crack, you'll start to move. It will start to flex in areas that it hasn't before, because obviously it's been solid and it's been fine. So it's unnerving, it's uncomfortable. It's something that, of course, Lewis Hamilton will have to get on with. He's got no choice to come in and box and have another seat. So he'll have to get on with it, unfortunately for him. But it won't be ideal, certainly, because you then lose that little bit of feel. You lose that ultra connection with the car.
Stroll into the pits and out again in less than 3 seconds. The first of the movers outside of Hulkenberg, who was all out of sync thanks to his early pit stop. Stroll feeds out in that Aston Martin down in 18th, just weaving left and right, trying to get some heat. And he has opted for another set of hard compound tyres. Here's Leclerc.
Formation tyre life is longer than expected.
So Leclerc's engineer telling him that tyre life is longer than expected, which would be some good news to him at least. We haven't seen a lockup from him in a while. This is something that's been plaguing Charles Leclerc all race long so far, particularly that front right, snatching it down into turn 1 and again into the left-hander as well of turn 10. Just hasn't been feeling comfortable. He's now chasing Russell, but he has been for the last few laps. He's around about 1.2 seconds behind Russell in 4th, but he's not making any dramatic inroads on the British racer.
No, he hasn't, as actually we're now starting to see drivers come into the pitch. Zhou Guanyu is now making his way down to his team as they're waiting there eagerly. He pulls into his box. What's this? Another set of hard tyres. That looks to me, Harry, that he's out and on his way. Fairly clean stop there from the Sauber team.
Yeah, that releases Tsunoda in 10th now. So it's going to be a real interesting battle to watch, actually, between that Sauber of Zhou Guanyu and the RB of Yuki Tsunoda. So first pit stop's happening then. We're approaching lap 30 out of 57. Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief F1 writer, what have you learned so far, and what does that mean for 2024 Formula One?
I've learned that Max Verstappen is about 0.8 of a second a lap faster than everybody else in the field, and that we might as well say goodbye to the World Championship right now.
But the reason to still keep listening is...
Look, I think what you've got to remember about this weekend is that Bahrain's a very particular track. It's the roughest track surface on the calendar. It makes particular demands of the cars. The track layout's mainly focused on slow and medium speed corners. It's all about tyre degradation here, rear tyre wear. Just because the Red Bull is the fastest car here doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have such an advantage elsewhere. Now, in qualifying, it was actually much closer than people expected. Charles Leclerc did a lap in the second session, which was about the same time as Verstappen's pole time. So in theory, if he'd been able to do as good a lap in the final session, he might have beaten Verstappen to pole. Would have made no difference at all on the basis of the evidence of today, of course, in terms of the race results. But it's not impossible that other teams in Saudi Arabia next weekend, for example, on a very different track surface, a very different track layout, much faster, much less abrasive, maybe considerably closer to Verstappen, because one of the Red Bull's advantages is tyre degradation, which we're seeing with Verstappen. He's producing such consistent lap times. That won't be such a problem for the other teams in Saudi Arabia. And of course there's the development race through the season. Mercedes have a new car philosophy. Ferrari believe they've got a good basis for development. But I mean, look, we all saw last year, Harry, Max Verstappen is one of the all-time greats. So is Lewis Hamilton, so is Fernando Alonso, but they don't have cars as good as his. And when you put an all-time great in a car this good, night follows day usually. So, you know, we hope it's not going to be another 1920 race blue wash by Verstappen and Red Bull. But at the moment, I don't see that many reasons not to believe that's what's going to happen.
OK, thank you, Andrew. The voice of the BBC's chief F1 writer, Andrew Benson. And you have to give it to Verstappen, though. He doesn't put a foot wrong, ever. And he has the fastest lap to boot at the moment with a 1:35.160. You get an extra bonus point if you can keep on to your fastest lap, as long as you remain in the top 10 come the end of the race, which I'm sure Verstappen might well do. He's got 15.5-second gap over his teammate Sergio Perez in second. Then comes Carlos Sainz in third, Russell fourth, Leclerc is fifth, Norris, Piastri sixth and seventh. Then comes Hamilton, Alonso and Tsunoda, the top 10 as pit stops begin to happen. A couple of people have gone, Bottas in the Sauber, Zhou Guanyu in the Sauber as well, so is Stroll and Hulkenberg in the Haas, along with Ocon in the Alpine. None of the top 10 have yet to come in for their second pit stop. The pit stoppers that we've had so far have moved on to, or stayed on, a hard compound of tyre. Everyone started on the soft, then moved to the hard, the slower compound of tyre, and have gone for it again. I said Bottas was in the pits. He's still in the pits. They've got issue with that front left, Rosanna.
They certainly have, yes, they've just taken it off. Mechanics running round to the back of the car, another mechanic's running round to the front. All a little bit confusing, no tyre to be seen. The tyre gunner is waiting to be able to put something on, and it is steaming, smoke coming off the brake. They've now, they're still
changing the wheel nut, Rosanna, they changed the wheel nut.
And George Russell also into the pits, a nice stop for Mercedes, but not great for Sauber.
Yeah, much quicker for Russell, who's in and out as Bottas still languishes in that Sauber pits, and they release him just in time for George Russell to come chasing by. I think they'll get away with that one. Not an unsafe release by the Sauber team, but a bit of a disaster. Almost a minute pit stop time for Valtteri Bottas in the Sauber. That will put him all the way down at the back. He's only in front of Logan Sargent, who had a little bit of an off-track excursion in turn 4 early on, luck up in the front right, and then a steering wheel problem, Williams are telling us, prevented him from getting back onto the track straight away. He has since been able to rejoin this race, so Bottas is now the only car in front of him. Russell pitted and emerged out in 9th, just in front of Yuki Tsunoda. And so Russell has made his second pit stop as we hear what went on in Valtteri Bottas' slow stop. He comes in, hits his marks, and they're just trying to get that front left on with the wheel gun, aren't they, Alice, with no such luck? Yeah,
they're trying several times to continue, and the guys there, the pit crew, are saying, put the car back up on the jacks. They did release it, but there's never been a retirement-free Bahrain Grand Prix, so they're all doing a fairly decent job at the moment. Cars are all fairly reliable. Whether I've just made a curse of the commentator, we'll have to wait and see. But Max Verstappen,
just impressed with the stats now, you could just come out with. Lovely work.
I'm trying to keep up with you, Harry, and all your stats. Verstappen, though, 17 seconds ahead, and that is the sound you can hear now. Riding on board with Max Verstappen. Everything seems having a little look around, little look left, checking out the scenery as he heads down into turn 11. Nice and easy and gentle, making sure everything is smooth, just looking after the tyres. You don't want to wind the lock on, you want to look after those front tyres. You don't want to get the rear stepping out. You want to be nice and gentle with that throttle pedal as the Red Bull crew on the pit wall watch on, but battles continue to rage on behind as Lance Stroll now dives down the inside. The Zhou Guanyu made the move stick, but Zhou is now going to have the aid of DRS. Is he? No, Lance Stroll managed to just get ahead in front of the detection zone, so he managed to keep that, and that should be a nice move there. An easy one that's going to be kept for Lance Stroll.
Yeah, nice tidy move from the Canadian racer. Zhou not enjoying this compound of tyre again so much. He was in that battle for a top 10 position, but now Stroll, who has also pitted, so this is for net position, finding himself in front of Zhou Guanyu, who's keeping him honest. Zhou seemingly getting on a little bit better in that Sauber compared to his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who's down in 19th. Magnussen is the most recent pit stopper, along with a McLaren who's just come in as well. It's Lando Norris who comes into the box, hits his marks, and then gets sent on his way on another set of hard compound tyres. Hamilton into the pits as well on a new set of hards, and he is released as his teammate blasts down the main straight, overtaking Fernando Alonso with the effect of DRS slam shut under braking. Russell through on Alonso. Russell already pitted, making his way back through the pack. Lando Norris comes out of the pits, and here's McLaren on the hard compound tyre, feeds out an 8th spot behind Fernando Alonso. Meanwhile, Zhou Guanyu still trying to keep with Lance Stroll down in 13th and 14th. But the battle at the moment, closest on the track, is between Alonso and Norris now. Alonso, who has now just been overtaken by Russell. It was Alonso and Russell, sorry. Alonso trying to keep within Russell within 1 second, but he's now fallen out of a second to try and get that DRS effect. Russell on fresher tyres compared to Alonso. This is the sound of Oscar Piastri into the right-hander, and just looking out of the commentary box, the McLaren team look poised for a pit stop, and I would imagine Piastri, as he makes his way around the double right-hander that sees off a lap of Bahrain, will dive to the right-hand side and come into the pits, which he does so, and he follows Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, who comes in and is out straight away. That's good work from the Ferrari team in the garage to get him out before Piastri comes in. Didn't have to hold Leclerc too long, as Piastri also now in. A little bit slow on the front perhaps for Piastri, as he now gets sent on his way. So this is the time then. Pit stops happening over the last few laps. We'll see how it all filters out and then give you the proper rundown of the full order. Norris emerges, or Piastri emerges behind Norris, and he's going to be nip and tuck with Lewis Hamilton, and he actually forces Hamilton to make avoiding action coming into turn one. Piastri I should say, couldn't quite get it turned in, runs deep into the corner. That allows Hamilton to undercut him and get through. So Piastri then, cold tyres, do you think that was, Alice?
Slightly. It looked like to me that he had rolled off the brake to try and cover Lewis Hamilton, and by doing so rolled off a bit too much and overshot the corner, and then just got on that AstroTurf on the outside of turn one there and lit up the rear tyres. That AstroTurf, trust me, does not have grip on the outside there, and Lewis Hamilton went, thank you very much, down the inside and his way through as Carlos Sainz now comes into the pits.
Trundling down to 80 kilometres an hour, the pit lane speed limit, and into the waiting arms of the Ferrari mechanics. Quick stop, all four wheels changed in 2.2 seconds. Nice work from Ferrari. Sainz, who pits from third, should emerge in front of Russell. Sainz, who's had a very good race. So he started this Grand Prix down in fourth. I think a bit disappointed in his qualifying performance, having been quite quick and quicker than Leclerc through Q1. And Leclerc making that move in qualifying and fighting him in the race. Leclerc with tyre issues, but now seemingly managing them better. Leclerc makes a move on Alonso down into turn one with the aid of DRS down the inside of the Spanish racer, who has won around this track 3 times, but not having as much luck in 2024. Alonso now in 6th, just behind Leclerc, who is in 5th. And actually behind Alonso now is Lando Norris in the McLaren, who is watching, waiting for his move. He's right onto the back of Fernando Alonso as they come through the right-hander of turn 8 and head uphill over the crest and then down into the cambered double left-hander of turns 9 and 10. Alonso runs a little bit deep. Norris keeps it nice and tight. Norris will get the DRS pack. Slightly better drive out through the corner. Norris moves to the inside. Alonso gives him the room. Late on the brakes for Lando Norris into the left-hander of turn 11. Norris makes the move. Will he make it stick? I think he will. Norris getting that move on Alonso for 6th place as Perez comes into the pits. Quick change for the Mexican in 2nd place. Not having any kind of battle with his teammate, who has such an advantage over everybody. But Perez actually having to look a little bit in his mirrors, because Carlos Sainz, sparks fly as he brakes in his Ferrari into turn 1. It's less than 2 seconds behind the Mexican. Could Sainz here be a bit of a worry for Sergio Perez?
Well, I don't think so at this stage at the moment. One thing though that it appears for now at least Red Bull are slower than 2023 and 2022 is their pit stops. Another slow pit stop there for Red Bull. Usually they're down at the 2.1 second mark, but that was 2.7. Another slow stop, and I'm sure Max Verstappen's was about 2.9. So usually they are the king and queens of pit stops, as now coming into the pits goes Max Verstappen, gets it stopped just before the pit limiter line, and his crew are patiently waiting.
Into the pits, hits his marks, and the mechanics get to work. The wheel guns attached to all 4 tyres, and he's sent on his way in 2.2 seconds.
Normal service, as assumed, hasn't it? I was a bit too eager and excited with Red Bull losing some pace somewhere, and they've just gone, no, hang on, Alice. We'll show you we haven't lost it, and they haven't, as Charles Leclerc just sets the fastest lap of the race.
And they've both switched, Perez has and Verstappen have both switched onto the soft compound of tyre. They did have an extra set of softs to use, having not used them all up in qualifying. Unlike everybody else in the field, they didn't have to use them in qualifying, such as their advantage. The soft red wall tyre, the quickest rubber, giving you that 1 lap advantage, and in the race for Red Bull at least, proving to be unstoppable. Everybody else on hards, bar the Daniel Ricciardo's RB as well. He's also gone onto the soft compound of tyre.
So Piastri had a bit of a slow stop because the left front wheel gun didn't quite go on properly, and sparks were flying. And then we're getting the slow motion replay of Piastri coming out the pits and running wide onto that very, very dusty AstroTurf in an attempt to keep Lewis Hamilton behind him. And another replay. Sandy can hear us riding on board with Daniel Ricciardo. Is he going to swoop round the outside going into turn 4? Yes, he does. Nice stuff there from Daniel Ricciardo.
Well, he's the only other driver outside of the 2 Red Bulls to go on that soft compound of tyre as well, is Daniel Ricciardo in that RB. He's 8.5 seconds behind his teammate Tsunoda in 14th. So Stroll in that battle for 10th is actually the big gainer at the moment. Joe and Tsunoda were vying over that position, that final points paying position, but both have fallen out of it. Joe 11th, and now Ricciardo down in 15th.
One thing I want to note is Haas. Their race pace doesn't particularly seem as bad, possibly, as it was last year. Magnussen's sort of hovering and staying in there around about sort of 12th, 13th place. He's had 2 stops, should I say. Nico Hülkenberg 2 stops. Of course, one of them was to change his damaged front wing after the first lap, but they haven't really dropped right down the order, which we were used to sort of seeing, weren't we, last year, Harry? So maybe they have made a step forward with their race pace.
I think they'll take that as Hamilton breezes past Fernando Alonso with DRS down the inside into turn 1. Hamilton now up into 7th, Alonso down into 8th. That's normal service resumed, as was pre-pit stop. I think Haas will be really buoyed by that. I mean, I know at the moment it's only 12th and made that 14th as Tsunoda just overtakes Hülkenberg, but they're in the mix. They're right in the thick of with their nearest rivals. And I was really worried at one point because Hülkenberg had such a stellar qualifying. It just looked like history from last year repeating itself again. Hülkenberg was able to deliver phenomenal 1-lap pace, but they would just, fall through the grid like a stone. This time, though, even with his early dramas, having for an early pit stop, he's still right there in the thick of it. So I think Haas will take a lot of hope from this race so far. It's Verstappen who leads, and currently looks like he's about to come across the line with a blistering lap, the fastest lap time, 1:32.608. And he said on the radio, do let me know the fastest lap if someone goes through. So even when he's clearly faster than everyone, he still wants the fastest lap, Andrew.
So just some perspective on that fastest lap. It's 1.5 seconds faster than the next fastest lap, which is set by Charles Leclerc. Now, of course, that's set on soft tyres, and Leclerc's will have been set on hard tyres, but he's on soft tyres because the car's so superior and it's so good on tyre wear. That's the scale of the task that Red Bull's rivals have to face. At the end of last year, Toto Wolff described catching up with them as having a mountain to climb. Mount Everest was actually the mountain he chose. Now, Mount Everest, as people may know, might be the highest mountain in the world, but it's not the most challenging. But nevertheless, in terms of scale, I think we're looking at the same sort of thing.
Maybe Mount Everest times 2.
Have you done Everest? Challenging, is it, or not easy?
I think if you know about mountaineering, you'll know that K2, for example, is more formidable. But I'm not underestimating how difficult climbing Mount Everest is, Harry.
Just give it a go in the summer, why not?
Well, you don't want to go in the summer. It's avalanche season.
Okay, maybe not then. That shows how much I know about climbing and mountaineering.
Lap 40 and we're on the mountaineering chat already. A couple of movers and shakers in the last few moments. It was Alonso losing. Alonso was in the battle with Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton went past him on the straight. Equally as well, we just saw the RB of Tsunoda getting through on Nico Hülkenberg. That was over 13th and 14th. Ricardo ahead of Albon in 15th and 16th. This is the full rundown of the order, though. Verstappen, and you say how mighty he was, Andrew, he also has a 16-second advantage over his teammate in the same car. Perez in second. That's Lewis Hamilton on the radio saying these guys are fast, mate. I think referring to the cars that are around him at the moment. He's battling with the McLarens. He's in a bit of a McLaren sandwich. Norris ahead, Piastri behind. Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Russell, Leclerc the top 5. Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Alonso, Stroll the top 10. Joe, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, Ricardo the top 15. Albon, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas, Sargent. The 20 drivers all still in this race and fighting right to the end. Lap 41 of 57 of this opening Grand Prix, the first of 24.
Yeah, copy Lewis. Pace is very tight. Norris did hit his tyres pretty hard early on, so maybe he'll pay for it later.
Hamilton being reassured by his engineer, Peter Bono, as he's often referred to, that it might well come back to him in terms of pace compared to Norris in front of him. Last lap around, Lando Norris did a 1:35.2. Lewis Hamilton did a 1:35.0. A couple of tenths advantage in the favour of the 7-time champion, both on a hard set of tyres. And a battle that is actually setting up quite nicely, I think, Alice, is the one for fourth. George Russell under pressure from Charles Leclerc, who is now closing and getting oh so close to within DRS. You've got to be within a second when you cross the detection point. I don't think he was this time around, but he'll get a good bit of tow as they head down the main straight in this battle for fourth. Russell ahead of Leclerc for the time being, but Leclerc, now having started this race looking very unsettled, now seems to have come into it a bit more dialed in perhaps into that Ferrari.
I would say so. We've not seen too many more lockups really from him since he was on the radio saying it was dangerous. Lando Alonso now into the pits. But also want to keep an eye on Lando Norris. He is slowly creeping his way onto the back of this battle between Charles Leclerc and George Russell. As a fairly decent and clean stop from Fernando Alonso. He's back out on his merry way, dropping outside of the top 10 though, but he will of course have fresher tyres than those around him.
Tears off a strip on his visor for good measure as Alonso rejoins this race in 11th. A couple of seconds behind Joe Guan Yu, who gets promoted up into the top 10 in that striking fluoro green Sauber. Alonso behind, ahead of Magnussen. Hülkenberg comes into the pits for Haas. And what has been a bit of a race to get back into the fight after a front wing change at the end of lap 1 with an incident with Lance Stroll at the very beginning of this race. That was really the only incident of note going into turn 1. Hülkenberg into the back of the Canadian racer. It spun Stroll around and gave Hülkenberg that front wing damage. And apart from a fairly even start between both Verstappen, who was on pole, and Charles Leclerc alongside him, Verstappen quite aggressively defending that inside line into turn 1. Since then hasn't really looked back, and Leclerc has gone backwards but is now trying to scavenge something in these closing stages. His teammate Sainz is in third and looks pretty comfortable right at the moment. He's remained around 3 seconds behind Sergio Perez. Russell now though is the one looking under threat, and Leclerc is now within that DRS range, within 1 second, just under, to try and make use of that drag reduction system. Can only be used at 3 points around this circuit in the run down to turn 1, from turn 3 to turn 4, and from turn 10 to turn 11. The flap on the rear wing opens with the driver pressing a button on their steering wheel and reduces the drag effect on the car. And we think, talking to the team principal of McLaren, Andrea Stella, a little earlier, gives the car behind with that DRS advantage around about 6/10 pace advantage over the one in front. So it's pretty notable if you can make it stick. At the moment, Leclerc is about 7/10 behind Russell. Still can't quite get alongside the British racer.
And you can hear now is riding on board with Charles Leclerc, going up through the gears as he heads down to the final corner. Still not quite in touch with 1 second behind George Russell. Up through the gearbox, already reaching 7th gear as he goes past pit entry. So a good job there. Closing the gap, and he has, sorry, I made a mistake, he has got the DRS now. I was just having a look actually at the DRS opening, saying he has done a good job of closing the gap there. So he is now 7/10 of a second behind.
I just come back to you.
It's Carlos Sainz on the radio, thinking, well, when is the hard going to become better than the soft? Because of course the two Red Bulls in front of him are on the soft tyre.
I think in the case of Verstappen, the answer is going to be never. With Perez, it might be a bit different. That's what Sainz is thinking of. He's thinking, can he challenge Perez for second place here?
And I don't think that's unrealistic, but he is running out of time. Carlos Sainz on lap 44 of 57. This is the sound of Fernando Alonso, currently outside of the top 10. Let's hear from Sainz again.
Around this lap, the hard should be faster than the soft.
So that's Carlos's engineer replying to him about the tyre advantage. So it might well come back to Sainz then in this battle for second in this race. The gap is 3.1 seconds at the moment in Perez's favour. Perez on a soft compounder tyre, but Sainz on the hard, which is now, according to his engineer, the faster compounder tyre. Meanwhile, Alonso has made the move back into the top 10. He's managed to get in front of Zhou Guanyu in the Sauber. Not really too much of a fight given by the Chinese racer, as Alonso now is 5 seconds back on his teammate Lance Stroll. Charles Leclerc, that's the sound you're hearing. Renewed his contract with Ferrari in the off-season. Long-term contract signed up with the Scuderia. He'll partner Lewis Hamilton next year. Be a very big year for Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton indeed. And right now, Leclerc is looking at the back of Hamilton's current teammate, George Russell. Closing up under DRS into the braking zone of turn 4. The right-hander takes a much tighter line than George Russell. Russell then much wider in that corner and took more of the runoff that's on the exit there. A bit more of an advantage for Leclerc in that sense.
Yeah, George is struggling with his tyres. He's struggling with the car, so he's altering the line ever so slightly to try and help him, but he's going to be under quite some pressure now on the way down to turn 11. Charles Leclerc looking the closest he has been in recent laps as he comes across the DRS activation now. Goes open as he's going to steam up to the back of George Russell, but not quite close enough, heading down into turn 11. So his next opportunity really will be heading down into turn 1, if, of course, he keeps within the 1 second DRS, which I'm sure he should do.
And Leclerc has the advantage of having 3 laps fresher tyres on that Ferrari, so I would say it's looking pretty sticky for George Russell to hang on to this 4th place at the moment.
Well, Russell doing an admirable job at the moment, but 0.6 of a second then. Leclerc chasing Russell back down the main straight we go. Lap 46 of 57 at the Bahrain Grand Prix, and the battle for 4th is well and truly on. Russell currently holding on to it, but can Leclerc close up down the main straight? He closes up under braking quite dramatically, but then just can't quite get near Russell on the straights. They'll get another dose of DRS as they make their way through turns 2 and 3 and then down the run to turn 4. Can Leclerc go late on the brakes here? No, he can't. He can't get near enough to Russell at the moment.
He is struggling, but I'm looking actually at the car that Ferrari seems to be snaking about a lot on the exit, so he's struggling with traction, and Sergio here is now riding on board with that car, which is the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, and just as he's getting on the throttle, snaking about the rear of the car, so really lack of traction there for him. As George Russell's had a look up
for Russell as they come into the left-hander of turn 10. Russell runs wide into the runoff. That allows Leclerc to get alongside him, and it's a drag race down to turn 11, and Leclerc wins out. That's all he needed. A bit of DRS and a mistake from George Russell into the left-hander. Leclerc through and up into 4th. Russell down to 5th.
Little bit of irony there for Charles Leclerc, who lost many of his positions in the first stint because he did exactly the same thing at the same corner. And now it's Russell's turn to struggle under braking on what is probably the most difficult corner on the lap, Alice.
Yeah, it definitely is. Andrew, you've got that right. Turning and braking at the same time, trying to get the car desperately stopped, and George Russell was unable to do that, causing a lock-up to his front left. And Charles Leclerc said, been there before, mate, I know what that's like, but thank you very much. I'll sail on past with the aid of DRS as well. So let's see now that the thing for George is to now hang on to the DRS of Charles Leclerc as they head down to turn 4, and up open goes the DRS flap on the rear wing for George Russell, but not quite close enough as they enter into turn 4. And George looks like he's struggling quite a lot with some understeer there on the exit of turn 4. So I would say it's more oversteer for the Ferrari and more understeer issues for the Mercedes.
Well, this doesn't seem to be quite going the way Mercedes would have wanted to. Russell now down to 5th, Hamilton still down in 11th. Let's head down to Rosanna.
There was a round of applause in the Ferrari garage, Harry, as you might expect when Charles made that move on George Russell. So the two Ferraris now, best of the rest. Carlos Sainz ahead of his teammate, though, and I do find it funny when finally a driver's given the push, suddenly they have another sort of lease of life, don't they? Carlos Sainz will be feeling pretty smug that he's ahead of his teammate this evening, albeit because Charles has had a few issues of his own.
Yeah, but Sainz has been, pretty punchy, as you say, from the get-go, saying he's quicker than those in front. And he had some rapid qualifying pace as well. Couldn't quite out-qualify his teammates. Such are the fine margins that we witnessed in qualifying as well from everybody behind Verstappen. Lap 48.57 then. Verstappen leads, 17.6 seconds the gap he has over his teammate Perez. Sainz, Leclerc, Russell the top 5. Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Stroll and Alonso round out the top 10. Alonso catching his teammate Stroll in the last few laps. Then it's Joe in the Sauber in 11th, Magnussen 12th, Tsunoda 13th, Ricciardo 14th and Albon the top 15, Ocon, Hülkenberg, Gasly, Bottas and Sargent the top 20. All 20 drivers started this race, still currently in it. Sargent had an issue early on, locked up going deep into turn 4, had a momentary issue with his steering wheel, then was able to get back going, but that's why he's plumb last. Valtteri Bottas just ahead of him in 19th. He had a almost minute-long pit stop time was how long he was stationary for. An issue with the front left wheel nut down at Sauber, and that's why he is in 19th. The two Aston Martins then, toe-to-toe, down into turn 1. Alonso with the DRS. Stroll not defending that one too much. Alonso gets the move done on his teammate up into 9th, Stroll into 10th. And I suppose when we look at Aston Martin, Alice, and where they were last year, such was the jump they made, they might be a bit disappointed by where they're at the moment.
I would certainly say so. Fernando Alonso, of course, finishing on the podium, and Lance Stroll finishing 6th after he missed, didn't he, the pre-season testing due to breaking a bone in his wrist, cycling accident, but they certainly will be running, as you said, Harry, 9th and 10th at the moment. So work to do for them, plenty of work as well for some of those further down the field. Williams, I'm sure, will be slightly disappointed with where they're at. And Alpine, Gasly is 14.9 seconds behind Nico Hülkenberg, who, of course, had to box earlier on as well due to a front wing damage. So Alpine certainly one of those two that will be hugely disappointed with their pace.
Lap 49 of 57, and all the intrigue at the beginning of this season as to what exactly the pecking order would be, the predictions that Red Bull and Verstappen would once again be at the top of the field, well, seemed to have come true, although it was tighter in qualifying than we first thought. The advantage in the race has well and truly continued for Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Perez 2nd, Sainz 3rd, Leclerc 4th, Russell the top 5. We have a little look further back down the field. There's still some fights going on between Magnussen in 12th. He's got the two RBs right behind him, Tsunoda and Ricciardo in 13th and 14th, trying to hunt the Dane down. Kevin Magnussen, who started down in 15th. Decent progress for the Dane, who was really unhappy with his qualifying, making it up to 12th. What I think they'll take more hope from there is the fact that they're able to keep up with their main rivals around them when it comes to race pace. Hulkenberg's down in 17th because he had an early pit stop, having to change his front wing. But you would expect Hulkenberg, who started in 10th in this race, would be right there as well. So I think Haas will be quietly confident, but they're now coming under a little pressure from the two RBs. Tsunoda heading Ricciardo, and this is the sound of Tsunoda looking at the back of Magnussen coming out of turn 10.
Good job, I would say, by Zhou Guanyu. He's done a really solid job in the Sauber, and a good job too by Carlos Sainz. Now, he's coming into this year, of course, already knowing that he hasn't got a seat yet signed, sealed and delivered for 2025. So you could say that's a little bit of pressure off him, because he knows he's hot stuff, and he's almost wanting, of course, to prove a point. I mean, I certainly would to Ferrari and say, well, you got rid of the wrong driver there, because I am the one that is faster. And he certainly showed that today, hasn't he, compared to Leclerc, who has his struggles with locking up and on the radio saying this is dangerous. The car is pulling to the right-hand side. But Sainz has kept cool, not had any of those particular issues. Gap as it stands at the moment is around about 4 seconds between him and Sergio Perez. Lap time-wise, he's about 5/10 a lap slower, certainly that last lap anyway. So I can't expect Carlos Sainz will be drawing in Sergio Perez at the moment. So what his engineer said to him on the radio, Harry, when I think the hards now should become better of the softs, it certainly doesn't look that way now at the moment for at least Carlos Sainz.
No, as you say, 4 seconds now, the gap between Perez and Sainz. Further back as well, just a move being made. Hulkenberg has overtaken Ocon in the Alpine. Hulkenberg up to 16th, Ocon down to 17th. His teammate Pierre Gasly in 18th, in what is compounding a bit of a miserable start to the season for the French manufacturer. This is the sound of Hulkenberg making that move.
Easy stuff. Esteban Ocon knew, I'm not going to fight this at all. I will be a sitting duck, so there certainly is no point. And he didn't do that. He let him go through, and there really is a big pace difference there between the Alpine and the Haas at the moment. An interesting battle that is starting to brew as we head into the final stages of this race. I said we were going to keep an eye on it. We certainly have. Is Lando Norris, who has closed the gap now down to George Russell. Last lap time as well. Daniel Ricciardo on the radio. I didn't quite catch that as I was talking, but Lando Norris now 0.6 of a second quicker previous lap compared to George Russell.
And Daniel Ricciardo in the RB into the braking zone of turn 1 quite late in the day, nearly went into the back of his teammate Tsunoda, who himself got checked up by Kevin Magnussen. Less than a second splitting all three of those drivers in these final stages. Great battle brewing over 12th spot, no points up for grabs, but Magnussen 12th, Tsunoda 13th and Ricciardo 14th. Norris is looking quick as well and catching George Russell in front of him. 2.3 seconds at the moment. Last lap around for George Russell was a 1:35.8, so actually he improved. He did.
Turned up the wick a little bit, hasn't he, Harry?
Last time around, Norris was about half a second clear.
Yuki, driver swap.
Are you kidding me now?
How did I know that was going to be an answer? That kind of a response from Yuki. But I agree with him. Why now? Why so early on in the season? Yuki Tsunoda is half a second behind the Haas of Kevin Magnussen in front. They're going to be lapped by one of the Red Bulls as well, which is Max Verstappen. So the leader's coming up behind them now. I agree. I'm on your side there, Yuki. I'm not sure why they're looking to swap them round.
Equally, it's over 13th, 12th and 13th. And even if Ricciardo was able to get in front, I don't think there's enough time for Ricciardo to catch up to Lance Stroll in 10th to get a point. There's over 10 seconds that you'd have to cave in. And Daniel Ricciardo's lap time last time around was a 1:37.1. Tsunoda's a 1:37.0. Here's Ricciardo.
I don't need to say anything.
So what Ricciardo's saying there is his pace is quicker. So the radio message I was talking over the top.
He's doing it. Tsunoda gets out of the way of Ricciardo on the exit of turn 4, pulls out to the right, lets his teammate through. Tsunoda then playing the team game. Can Ricciardo make that count and overtake Magnussen for 12th place. They all have to get out of the way because Max Verstappen is now coming through to lap them all as he comes into the left-hander of turn 10. So first he laps Tsunoda, next up will be Ricciardo. I find that a really bizarre call at this stage of the season, over 13th and 14th. Okay, maybe if it was over the final points playing position and they were that close, but well, let's wait and see if Ricciardo suddenly dramatically drops his lap time. But I'm sceptical on that one, Alice.
He is the faster driver at the moment on the soft tyre compared to Yuki Tsunoda on the hard tyre, as he now has to pull over himself to let Max Verstappen through. They've lost touch with the Haas due to having to let Max Verstappen by. You cannot pass any more than 3 blue flags, or these days they're LED light boards as well. So any signal, you have to make sure you've done that within the 3 laps. But Sergio can hear now is riding on board with Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, thanks guys, I appreciate it.
Bit of sarcasm there from Tsunoda. I feel his frustration, to be honest. He is now still within touching distance of his teammate. But like you said, Harry, let's keep a little look on the lap times. Daniel Ricciardo clearly, though, felt that he was the faster driver, so I'm guessing that's what he said. Probably didn't hear that radio message.
Well, look, Ricciardo is on the soft tyre. Yes, that is the quicker compounder tyre, but we've heard so far as well, looking at the data, that soft compounder tyre has a limited life before the hard comes back and becomes the pacier tyre. And I just don't think that was the moment to make that call. But there's a reason I'm not on the pit wall. We'll see how that one unfolds, and I'm sure Yuki Tsunoda will have some things to say to Rosanna in the presser after this race. We're on lap 54 of 57. Verstappen leads by over 20 seconds from his teammate Sergio Perez. Then it's Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, the top 5. Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Alonso, Stroll, the top 10. Joe, Magnussen, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Albon, the top 15. Hulkenberg, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas and Sargent. The 20 drivers who started this race all still in it as we come towards the completion of the first of 24 Grand Prix in this season of Formula One, the longest ever in the sport's history. And it's 20 years of the Bahrain Grand Prix being on the calendar as well. First coming on back in 2004, set to remain on the calendar as well. 3 laps to go. And where are the closest battles? It's still between Magnussen, Ricciardo and Tsunoda.
They're actually doing a similar lap time, by the way.
And Magnussen, I think a word for him as well, dealing with that pressure quite nicely, the 2 RBs behind him. And Magnussen will be buoyed by that progress that he's made in the Haas. Zhou Guanyu, quite an impressive run, I think, into 11th. It won't be a point. But I think compared to where Zhou started, which was down in 17th, making up 6 positions in this race, I think they'll be very buoyed by that. Here's Tsunoda again. Here we go.
Just do your best.
So that's...
We are looking at it.
The Yuki on the radio saying he's got to speed up, he's not fast at all, referring to his teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who they just had to do a driver swap. Ricciardo is on that soft compounder tyre compared to Tsunoda on the hard, but the pace differential closes quite dramatically after around about 10 laps. And this is a fight over 12th, 13th and 14th. Tsunoda's not happy about this one moment, and you're saying, Alice, that actually the time Ricciardo isn't that much quicker than Tsunoda as it currently stands. Last lap around, what was it? Well, they'll come across the line in a minute, so we'll see what this lap does. Verstappen embarks on the penultimate race lap, across the line for lap 56 of 57. So last lap around for Ricciardo, a 1:36.6. Last lap around for Tsunoda, a 1:36.6.
Identical, but one thing to note as well is this little trio of cars, but it's Kevin Magnussen, Ricciardo and Tsunoda, are catching Zhou Guanyu. So this could soon become a 4-way battle for 11th place. Of course, Zhou has had to let Max Verstappen pass, and when you are moving out the way for a blue flag or a blue light, you do lose time. But Daniel Ricciardo now is right on the back of Kevin Magnussen, so he'll be looking to try and make sure he gets past him, because I wouldn't be surprised that if he doesn't, we might possibly see the RBs say, right, OK, Daniel, you didn't get past, so we'll swap you back around. But we'll have to wait and see.
Well, they're close, and Ricciardo is desperately trying to get past Magnussen, and I suppose RB were thinking, well, Joe Guan Yu in the Sauber 11th is within touching distance. Joe is only 1.4 seconds in front of Magnussen, but the call either came too late or Magnussen is just proving quite the hurdle for Ricciardo to overcome. Half a second between them as they approach the final 2 corners around this Bahrain International Circuit. Still another DRS zone as we begin the final lap. Max Verstappen cruising to his first race win of the 2024 season. Right then, down to turn 1. Ricciardo with DRS. Magnussen, sparks fly as he moves slightly to the inside to defend that position. This is the battle for 12th on the final lap. Ricciardo not able to make a move into turn 1. He'll get another go in the run down to turn 4. Magnussen doesn't feel the need to defend, runs quite tight into the right-hander at turn 4. Ricciardo is right there with him. Tsunoda is a little bit adrift, watching on, and they make their way through turns 5, 6 and 7. The middle sector, Magnussen leaving the door open slightly. Ricciardo thought about it into the right-hander, but then himself struggling to turn the car in. Approaching the final DRS zone of this lap. Can the RB make a move on the Haas? We'll have to wait a few corners to see how that one pans out. But Max Verstappen making his way with only a few corners left to run under the lights here in Sakir in the Bahrain International Circuit. Round 1 of 24. And Max Verstappen starting 2024 how he left 2023. Adrian Newey designing an imperious RB20. Verstappen weaving across the line to win the first Grand Prix of the year. Max Verstappen wins the Bahrain Grand Prix. The Red Bull team celebrate on the pit wall. The fireworks erupt, and it will be a Red Bull 1-2 after 57 laps of racing. Sergio Perez, having started down in 5th, recovers up into 2nd and across the line as he embarks on his final season with Ferrari. Carlos Sainz gets a round of applause and finishes off the podium in 3rd. Leclerc should come across the line in 4th. Russell will be 5th. Max Verstappen, though, Alice, once again, ominous and foreboding, but masterful at the very same time.
In another league, even compared to his teammate, a stellar job by himself, by his Red Bull team.
A really, really professional drive, Max. Can't ask for more than that. Great start to the year. Nice one.
That was simply lovely. What a great race. Unbelievable balance as well. Yeah, great start to the year, guys. Really, really good. 1-2 as well, so absolutely fantastic.
Well, Max, as you say, 1-2 finish, fastest lap, pole position, clean sweep. So brilliant start to the year. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, I couldn't have asked for more, really. Great start. Thank you.
Very polite there on the radio from Max Verstappen, and I have to agree with him. A very professional and simply lovely job by him and his entire team. Got fastest lap of the race as well, a 1:32.608, which means he gets that extra, let's call it bonus point for fastest lap of the race. And just to touch in on that battle further back down between Kevin Magnussen, Ricciardo and Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo didn't give the place back, wasn't instructed to, or maybe he was, but he never got past Kevin Magnussen and then ultimately stayed in front of Yuki.
GT, buddy. Tidy job.
Yeah, good job, guys.
Checo, thank you very, very much for that. That was a very strong drive. Well done. 1-2 finish for the team. Maximum points. Best way to start the year.
Sergio Perez then comes home 2nd, but over 20 seconds adrift from his teammates. Driver of the day going to Carlos Sainz, according to the fans. Here he is, finished in 3rd.
Good job. We could keep up with her.
Red Bull today. We start from here, we go for more. But it's a good start, good test, good preparation. Let's go for it now.
Good work from Carlos Sainz there. He'll be happy with that one. Let's head down to Rosanna Tennant.
Christian Horner, congratulations. You guys have done it again. There are hugs all round, Harry, as you might imagine. Well done, a 1-2 to start things off. Is this a sign that you are here to stay in 2024? Red Bull leading all the way.
Well, look, it's been the best possible start to the season. A very clinical race by the team, well executed, and yeah, the perfect start.
Enjoy the celebrations.
Thank you very much.
The fireworks erupt, the music plays, and Max Verstappen climbs out of his RB20, stands tall, the helmet on, but the smile can be seen for miles as he clenches both his fists, runs over to his team to celebrate. And the fireworks really are something to behold, providing just as much light as the floodlights that illuminate this track. Sergio Perez joins his teammate, a pat on the shoulder from Max Verstappen, a photo to boot. Maximum points for Red Bull Racing to kickstart 2024. Max Verstappen, the defending champion. The closest man, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, finishing in third. Charles Leclerc was fourth. George Russell, fifth. Then came Lando Norris in the McLaren in sixth. Lewis Hamilton in seventh. Oscar Piastri was eighth. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll and the Aston Martins round out the top 10. In 11th, Joe, then Magnussen, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Albon the top 15, Hülkenberg, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas and Sargent, the 20 drivers who started this race and who all finished it. Alice, after 57 laps, what's your main takeaway?
Max and Red Bull have still got it. That's not gone anywhere over the winter. As I said, just a fantastic drive by him. He's just in another league compared to everybody else. You could say the car is as well, but we're turning up compared to his teammate, which we often do a lot, don't we? Certainly have in the past couple of years. 22 seconds ahead of his teammate. I think the gap last year when they got a 1-2 finish was around about 15 seconds. But a note to Carlos Sainz as well, who pulled his Ferrari up the order, was closing the gap ever so slightly to Sergio Perez, would he say, maybe with a few extra laps. He could have got past the Mexican 2.6, that gap ended up there. So a solid drive from Carlos Sainz as well. But of course, main takeaway is Red Bull and Max are still ahead of everybody else.
26 points going the way of Max Verstappen, then 25 for the win, 1 for the fastest lap of the race as well, as the top 3 drivers congregate in Parc Fermé around the winning car, the RB20. And we'll hear from them in a few moments' time to see how that first race unfolded from their points of view. But outside of Verstappen and Red Bull's dominance, a few other talking points as well, particularly Ferrari versus Mercedes, McLaren's pace as well. What happened to Alonso and Aston Martin? Where are they at? And all those questions will be answered. Let's hear from Verstappen with David Coulthard.
Max Verstappen, congratulations. Back-to-back victories here. Your 55th Grand Prix victory.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think today went even better than expected. I think the car was really nice to drive on every compound. I think we had a lot of pace. And yeah, it was just super enjoyable to drive today. We really stayed out of trouble. And yeah, great start to the year. I mean, it couldn't have been better.
No, absolute clean sweep. You led every lap. Fastest lap by a sizable margin. It looked like playtime for you out there.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I felt really good in the car. And yeah, it's always very special to have these kind of days because they don't happen that often, you know, that it just all goes perfect. And yeah, you are just one with the car. And everything just feels great.
You had to be quite defensive into the first corner. We can always expect that here, but thereafter, no issues.
Yeah, I think the start was good. Of course, the first corner is a very tight hairpin. So naturally, you want to defend the inside just to be safe. So that's what we did, and basically from there onwards, we just focused on our own race.
You don't get long to celebrate this victory because in a few days we're heading to Saudi for round 2.
Yeah, but that's fine. You know, it's a long season, and it's a great place in the world to be anyway. So for me, yeah, a couple of days rest, and then we go again.
Okay, Max, congratulations on your victory.
Thank you.
And now Checo Perez same result as last year, but great comeback from your 5th place qualifying. Satisfied with your race?
Well, I think it was the maximum we could have achieved. It was quite a tricky race, with the management of the tires. I think there's plenty we will learn from tonight's race, which will be important for the championship. But overall, I think it's a great way to start the season.
So just expand on that. What were the issues you were managing on the tires, and was it compound to compound?
It was really compound to compound, the amount of sliding we were having. We will have some issues with the engine braking, the drivability, which is not easy around here because there is plenty of low speed. But like I say, I'm sure we will analyze all of that tonight and make sure we learn for Jeddah.
Yeah, well, Jeddah less than a week away, so you don't have long to come back and then try and build on this result.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good team momentum, and we got to keep it up for the coming weekends.
Okay, enjoy the podium.
Thank you.
And finally, our 3rd place finisher, Carlos. You were feisty out there. You were really, looking like you wanted that podium result. Great drive.
Yeah, I felt really good out there today. The start wasn't ideal, but from then on, I just managed my tires well, and then from there, I could do my pace. Overtook 2 or 3 cars on the way to the podium, and then keeping up with the Red Bull there at the end, which was a pleasant surprise. Still not enough, not where we want to be, but good steps forward compared to last year and a solid start to the season.
It's a solid start indeed. Different compounds at the end of the Grand Prix there. What were you learning? This is the first race of the season, so you're sizing up your opposition.
Yeah, we had a very clear plan using soft and then 2 hards. With the hard in our car, we feel a bit more comfortable because it overheats less, it degrades less. It is a bit a trickier tire with warm-up and with front locking, but then once we get it working in our car, you can push on it. In the Red Bull, you can see different trades, different strategy choices, but I think also that's the beauty of F1, and we could play around a bit with strategy today.
Yeah, the beauty of Formula One is a race that never ends. 1 week will be in Saudi. Is it a circuit that will play to the strengths of your car, do you think, or how do you see looking forward?
Let's see, it's the first different circuit that we go with this new 2024 car, so it will be a bit of a surprise for everyone to see where we are. I expect the cars like the McLaren and the Red Bull that last year they were very good in high-speed circuits to be competitive there, but our car has also improved in the high speed, so hopefully we can be also strong there.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
The top 3 drivers talking to former Formula 1 driver David Coulthard. And it was Max Verstappen on top in Bahrain, ahead of Sergio Perez, his teammate, and Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, completing the podium. My thanks to the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson, racing driver Alice Powell, and our lead commentator Harry Benjamin for talking us through the Bahrain Grand Prix. 1 out of 24 is done, but we move quickly now to Saudi Arabia next weekend. It's not long, is it? We will be practicing on Thursday and racing on Saturday once again, and we'll have live coverage for you throughout the days in Saudi Arabia. We'll also have all the reaction to the Bahrain Grand Prix on the Checkered Flag podcast. Hopefully you can look out for that later on this evening. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.